Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar. This is the second in our Banking Excellence series, of which we have 8 sessions. So just before we begin, just want to draw your attention to the chat box, because within there we've got the links to all of the sessions that form part of this series. So if you weren't aware of it being a badge, you do have an opportunity to earn the badge with us. And I'll go into a bit more detail in a couple of slides' time. My name's Jackie, and today I'll be taking you through session 2, which is all around managing customer receipts and supplier payments in Sage 50 accounts. We do have Matt and Michael on in the background, so if you've got any questions throughout the session, please do get those sent across to us. Don't feel you need to wait till the end of the session today. As I say, they're going to be here throughout, so they can answer your questions as and when they come to you today. You will notice that you've been placed on mute, so that's just so that you can't sort of speak to the team directly. But if you do have your questions, then please do use the questions panel. So the icon for that is the one that looks like a speech bubble with the question mark in the middle, and you can send your questions across to us that way. There is also a handout for today's session, so if you want to take a copy of the slides that we've got today, you can do so by using the icon that looks like a document with a folded corner. There is also links in your follow-up email today to an article that contains all of the information from our webinars, and also there are links to the recordings as well once we've uploaded those. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is part of the Banking Excellence Badge. So if you attend 6 of the 8 plus the quiz, so the quiz is a mandatory session, then you will be able to get your Banking Excellence Badge, which you can see there. And we're using a new platform called Accredible. So if you have used us in the past and you've achieved a badge, we've actually moved on to a new system where you can start to hold everything in your wallet. Now, I will be showing a quick video of that towards the end of the session there, so you can start to get to grips with what that will look like. So please do hang on if you want to see what that looks like. We are running all of these sessions twice, so you do have an opportunity to access all of those sessions. So if you did miss this morning's, please don't be alarmed. There is another session on that I think it's later on next week. But like I say, the link to all of the sessions is in the chat panel there if you want to grab the link to that. Okay, so what we're going to be covering in this session, so we are going to start off with some of the basics. So we are going to talk through how to process customer receipts, and then we're going to look at payments on account. And then we're going to look at some of the sales receipts options that you have available to you. So we're looking at some of the alternatives for not only processing the payment in Sage, but also actually taking that payment as well. We'll move on to supplier payments, and we're going to show you some of the features which are available in certain versions of the software. So these are designed to make your life easier, and it might be that one of those features is just what you need. You might want to consider looking at the versions that contain those features. And very briefly at the end, we're just going to touch on remittances as well. Okay. So let's get into the content there. So first of all, we're just going to go through customer receipts. So the customer receipt feature is the method by which you record a receipt against a customer record, but pay it against an invoice. Okay, so you're receiving money into your bank account, but it's been specified which invoice that is going to pay off. So not only are we taking the payment, but we're marking that invoice as paid off. You can also take payments that aren't against an invoice. Okay, so it might just be that you're not sure which invoice it needs to pay off, or it might be that it's a deposit that someone is paying you in advance. So that's a payment on account. Now, what I'm going to show today, I'm going to focus more on the customer side. A lot of what I'm going to show you today is the same on suppliers as well. Okay, so the windows are very familiar to one another. So today when we're talking about customers, we're going to be talking about SR transactions and SA transactions. So that's a sales receipt, a sales payment on account. And when we're talking about supplies, we're talking about purchase payments or PP transactions and payments on account. And as I mentioned there, you can generate a remittance for your purchase payments or your payments on account, and this allows you to give more information to your supplier about the invoices that you're intending to pay. But we will show you that a little bit later on. There are links throughout the handout today as well. So you'll notice this one here. This is a link here to an article. Okay, so there is lots of information on our help center that's going to help you with this. So if you're new to the software, there's lots of help available on the help center there. So please do use those links in the handout once you've downloaded them. Okay, so I'm actually going to jump into the demonstration now and start looking at some actual payments here. Okay, so we're working on a data set here, and I've got all of my customers in my customer list here. So we're going to look at some basic transactions first of all, and that is a customer receipt. First of all, to note, this option is located in two different parts of the software, but both of them are going to take you to the same place. So it doesn't matter which way you access this, both will achieve the same thing. So first of all, you can see we've got customer receipt within customers, and we also have customer receipts within the bank accounts module as well. So both of these will open up this window here, and that's the same across both of those features there. So if I go into customers as well, customer receipt, it's exactly the same window. So whatever works for you. And what we can basically do here is we can, first of all, just check which bank. So it's picking up at the moment, if we go into the bank accounts, what is my default account, okay? So all of your softwares will have a default account. Now, by default, that's normally 1200. Now, you can check which one that is by going into settings and control accounts, and you can see what your default bank is. So it's the fourth option down there. My default bank is set to 1200. Okay, so if you've got a bank account that is your main bank account that you're using the most often, you might just want to change that over. So I'm popping back into bank accounts and customer receipt, but this can be changed. Okay, so you're not locked in at this point. You can change your bank account to a different one if need be. Next is the customer details. Okay, so this allows me to select which customer I'm processing this receipt for. So I'm going to select one that I've been working with, which is this one here. And immediately what that does is it looks at that particular customer for any outstanding transactions. Okay, so it's now populated the lower window with some outstanding transactions. What it's also done is it's recognized one of these transactions has been marked as disputed, and it's just highlighting that to me before I continue. But I can click OK, and you can see which one has been disputed. So it might just be that that particular invoice was something that the customer was querying, and we just wanted to pop the dispute on just so we don't chase it in the meantime. So we've got all of the outstanding invoices. We've got 4 invoices. We've got an outstanding credit note on here as well. And we've also got a payment on account. So we've got a few different transactions showing on here. So the first thing I want to show you is just allocating a payment directly to an invoice. So let's, for example, have a look at this first one here, 635. Now I'm just going to highlight this one here, 635, because I do have a feature activated on here. Okay, I do have the option to list invoice / credit by item line. Okay, now I'm just going to switch that off because I just want to show you how different that looks. So if I just untick this box, what you'll notice there is some of those transactions appear to have disappeared. Okay, now what it hasn't done is it hasn't removed them. It's actually combined a number of invoices under this singular line here. Okay, so if I retick the box, what you'll recognize there is those 4 invoices were posted on the same date. So they're quite old, these ones, but they were also posted with the same reference. And these actually came from the invoices and credits module. So if I looked back at the invoice with invoice number 53, you would see that these 4 transactions came from that module. So that is what we call grouping. So it's grouped them together because they've got similar posting transactions and they've come from the same window. So sometimes people do want to see the individual items, and it could just be that you want to see the total invoice. You don't want to do a part payment of the overall invoice. So that's a choice for you, but by default, it will normally show you the entire breakdown. So for the purposes of the demonstration today, I'm just going to focus on this top one here, okay? And we've got this outstanding invoice of £258.38. And what we can do is we can either pay it in full, or we might even have a part payment, okay? So if we want to do a part payment, what we can do is type into this receipt column the amount we want to part pay. So for example, if it was £100, we could do a part payment. If I click on save, so just remember that was £258.38. We click on save, it's going to post it with today's date. And when we go back to that customer, so I'm just going to reload the same customer. What we'll notice there is that invoice has now been part paid and we have the remaining value showing. Okay, so that element that has been paid has sort of disappeared from this window because it's now paid off, because we're only seeing outstanding transactions in this window here. Now, if I want to pay it in full, I have a few different options. Okay, I can type in the amount, so 158, but if your typing's anything like mine, probably a little bit slow and prone to errors. So what you can also do is, if you're paying in full, is you do have the option at the top here to either pay in full, or you can use F3 on your keyboard, so use your function key. So I click pay on full against that one, it enters the value for me. And again, all I need to do is check that my bank account's correct, my date is correct, and then save. And that does that for me. Now, if we just go back into that customer, what we should notice, that first invoice of the 4 that we've grouped together has now been removed from the list because it's no longer an outstanding transaction. It no longer requires attention. So that is simply paying off an invoice with a sales receipt. Next, we've got a payment on account. Okay, so like I say, this could be a deposit that's being paid in advance, or it could just be that you've received a payment, but you don't know where to allocate that to just yet, but you want to process that on the customer's account because you want to show that that customer has made a payment. So for this example, what we're going to do for a payment on account is we're almost going to ignore this lower box here. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to type the value into this box here. So I'm going to say we're paying £330. Again, I'm going to leave the bank as it is. I'm going to leave it with today's date. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save. So I've not got anything in the receipt column there. And then we get the message to say, do we want to post this as a payment on account? So I'm going to say yes to that. And I'll say yes to that. And if we bring back that customer record again, our invoices are in exactly the same position as they were, but we now have this new SA transaction, this payment on account feature that's appeared. Now, because I'm on standard VAT as well, what it's done is it's posted it on the correct tax code for me. So it's posted it onto a T9. If you were posting that on VAT cash accounting, you'd get an additional window that just asks you what tax code you wish to use for that. So you might then find yourself in a position where you finally know where you need to allocate that to. It might just be that you've just popped the invoice on because we're a few weeks further down the line, or the customer's informed you actually wanted to allocate it to this particular one here, which is transaction 637. And I want those to be sort of matched off against one another, so they're no longer showing as outstanding. So as you can see, we don't quite have the full payment of the invoice. If we did have the full payment, we could pay in full against both of them. We don't quite have the full amount, so what I do need to do is find the lower amount, which is 330, type it against this one. And for this one, I can pay in full because it's 330. Now, the key thing to note here is if we are just allocating them against one another, so we're matching the two transactions together, we don't want a resulting transaction to appear. What we need to be just noting is the analysis total. So the analysis total should remain as 0 if we're just allocating. Okay, now if you are joining the quiz, I don't want to give away too many answers, but that may be in there. So think about that one. So your analysis total should always come back to 0. And that means it's just going to match those off. So if I save that now, just checking the total. When we go back into our customer once again, you can see now we only have that £3.11 left outstanding, and our second payment on account has disappeared because that's now allocated off. We can check this on the other side, okay? So how we can do that, we can go into the record. So rather from the bank, we can go into that custom record, open up their record and pop into the activity. And then here you can see things like the allocations. So I've got my payment on account highlighted here. You can see where that's allocated to using the lower box. So 1173 is allocated against this SI here. So I just need to expand this little column here. And it shows you it's allocated to SI 637. We can also see in here what's outstanding and what's partially outstanding. So don't think I've got anything partially outstanding. Oh, I do. I still got that one there. You can see by the P next to it, it means that's partially paid, but it's also partially outstanding. And these transactions here are entirely outstanding at the moment. So that is your customer receipts. But I'm going to pop back into here because there are a few features in here that are designed to help you with these, okay? And they're probably not as well used, possibly because people aren't aware of what they actually do in the software. So the first one, I'm going to, at the top here, just select my customer again. We've got the option to clear form, okay? So that does exactly what it says there. It just clears what we've selected, takes us back to as though we've just opened the window. Okay, so clear form just wipes everything from here. We then have the option to pay by card. Okay, so maybe while we're in this window, we wish to take that payment also. It's a good kind of prompt in here. I'm processing it in my Sage, but let's get that payment done at the same time. So you do have the option to pay by card. This is one of the options. I will go through a couple of others with you in a few moments. But if you are using something called Opeo by Elevon, which was previously called SagePay, then you can link that up to your software. And that will mean that when you press this button, it will launch into a payment window for you to actually process that payment into your Opeo account. So you can actually link it into your software. So that's one of the features. It does show you as well where you need to pop your details in. So you need to go into settings and company preferences to get that set up. Also, if you haven't signed up before, there is a link there to do so. Showed you the pay in full option. Okay, so that's a good way of freeing yourself up from having to type and retype. But then we've also got these options of the wizard and automatic. So we'll just pick on this customer again. And the wizard's probably there if you're maybe not as confident with the steps that you need to take. It gives you a wizard to sort of walk through. So here you can choose what you want to do. So if you know that from what you're doing today, all you want to achieve is to pay some invoices, you can select the pay invoices option and you can pop in the amount. I'm just going to pop in £10. And what that will then do is give you a window again, and it will allocate it to the first one on your list there. So the oldest one in your list. It hasn't done anything until I click save. So even with using the wizard, you're not committed until you click save. So if you're not sure on it, don't worry, we can always undo that. You might be coming into the wizard just to do those allocations. Okay, so if you want to select that option, you can allocate payment on accounts to invoices. Select the account. And again, what it does is it just gives you the window again, okay, but it's automatically found an invoice for £170.38 and a payment on account which matches that. So it's automatically populated those. But again, I've got the opportunity to intervene if I'm not happy with that allocation. I could change that over if I wanted to. So the wizard is there to sort of help you with some of those situations, which you can do manually, but it's more of a guided process there. The next one, I'm just going to clear the form again there just to get us back to where we were, is the automatic feature. Bear with. The automatic feature, okay? And what this allows you to do, I'm doing it the wrong way around, I apologise, is it may be that you have been given a particular value by your customer. So they may have given you, for example, £300, okay? And they may have just said, pay off my oldest invoices first. So what you can do here with this one here is into the amount is pop in the value they've sent you, £300, and then I can use the automatic option just to allocate that to my oldest outstanding transactions. So from that resulting £300, I can pay this invoice off in full, I can pay this remaining balance off in full, and I can pay £126.51 of this outstanding balance here. So I can save, and what it's automatically done is just automatically allocated that for me, and I haven't had to work out how much was left over to allocate here. So again, if I save, I just post those transactions, and then what I should see is just that tiny bit of outstanding invoice and my credit note and my payment on account. So other features we've got there is departments. If you want your payments to go through a different department, then you can specify that here before you process your transactions. And also we've got the option to print the list. So if you've got a long list that you want to work through, you can use that. And we've got the send to Excel option too. Okay, so that is the customer receipts. And like I say, that pretty much covers your supplier payments too. So if we go into supplier payments, you'll notice the window is pretty much identical. Okay, so you're working with exactly the same situations, just different transaction types. Okay, slightly different transaction types in this case. The same goes for the payment on account. You can post a payment on account, and for allocating, exactly the same process. Pay and fill against both, and just check that analysis total returns to 0. Okay, I'm going to pop back to the slides and just talk about those options. Okay, so like I say, in terms of actually taking the payment, so you're recording a payment into your account software, but actually taking the payment, there are various methods to help you with this. Okay, now one of the most simplest forms is to include bank details on your invoice layout. Okay, that means when you send the invoice out to your customer, they've got the information they need right in front of them to make that payment. Okay, believe me, having the details close to hand does mean you can get paid quicker. So we are covering that. I think it's session 8, so that might be early next week that we're covering that. We've got a dedicated session on adding those bank details on to your invoices and showing you some of the standard reports that pull that through. We have the OPEO option that I showed you, so you can use OPEO, which was formerly SagePay. We do have some other features as well. So we have invoice payments. Now, we're not going to go into any great detail on invoice payments, but we do have a recording which talks you through invoice payments. So if you use Stripe or PayPal, what you can do with invoice payments is add a pay now option onto your invoices. So when they receive an electronic invoice, they can click on the link and it will direct them to Stripe or PayPal to process the payment. Again, making payment very easy. Go cardless. So we do also team up with Go cardless. You have the option to set up direct debits for your customers. So if you're wanting to look at that, Go cardless is the feature for you. But there are also things like invoice finance, which is more on the supplier side, and salary and supplier payments. So this allows you to process payments to your suppliers and also to your employees if you're using payroll. So if you are looking for ways in which you can sort of streamline your payment systems, these are probably some of the options to have a look at online. Okay, so as I mentioned, supplier payments is pretty similar, but there are some additional features available in Suppliers to help you again with making those payments to your suppliers. Now, again, we're getting into the more niche areas here. So this particular feature that I'm going to talk about next is called Suggest Payments. And this feature here is only available in standard or professional. Okay, so we're just going to highlight some of the ones that are additional once you've moved on to standard and professional. Again, if you've got any questions, please do get them across to the team and we'll see if we can get them answered for you. If there's any we can't answer, we might just follow up shortly after today's session for you as well. So, suggest payments. Okay, this feature it's great if you've just sort of been given a balance. Okay, it might just be that you've freed up a balance and you want to use this to pay some of your suppliers. So, for example, you might be expecting to spend £1,000 on something else that's been freed up, so you're going to use that to pay off some of your older balances on your suppliers. Now, again, without running reports and going through each record individually, you can use the suggest payments to show you those which you should be sort of considering first. Okay. And it takes certain things into account here. So first of all, priority suppliers. Okay, you might not know, but you can mark some suppliers as a priority. Okay, you might want to mark them as a priority because you want to maintain a good relationship with them, or it may just be that you've got different terms with them, so you need to make sure that they are always paid first. And you can mark them as a priority supplier, which I'll show you in just a moment. But then it also does, after that, it will allocate funds to the highest overdue balances. Okay, so it's looking at the highest overdue balances, not the oldest overdue, just the highest overdue balances. Okay, so let's have a quick look at those. I'm just going to pop back into the data. First of all, I'm going to show you on suppliers where you can mark them as a priority customer. So I think I've got one set up. We'll have a look at this one. So this, apologies, a priority supplier, not customer. And it is in the credit control tab. Okay, so within here, you can see halfway down, we've got that tick box for priority supplier. Okay, you can specify what the criteria for that is. This one here has been marked as a priority supplier. So then we can go into suggest payments. Okay, now again, suggest payments is up at the top here on our suppliers window, and within here you can see it's brought up a list of all my outstanding invoices. The first one on my list is in fact my priority customer. Okay, so I've got that one marked as priority, so that's coming up first on the list there. What's then got is my highest outstanding balances. So these four here have got the highest outstanding balance. So from here, what I can do is then I can decide which ones I'm going to make the payment for. So it might, like I say, be that I've got £1,000. I'm gonna raise that slightly. I'm gonna say 20,000 just so I can get a few on here. So 20,000, which was meant to go into a different project. It's no longer going there. So I can pop the 20,000 in and I can do suggest payment. And again, as you can see, the payment amount is now allocated where it feels I should allocate those payments to based on priority status and the oldest outstanding balance there. Sorry, the highest outstanding balance. So it's allocated them this way. Now I can alter these, okay? So I might decide actually I don't want to pop that there. I want to pay this one. So I want to pop the value in against this one. So I can make changes. What I can also do is exclude any suppliers that I'm paying by direct debit in standing order so that they're no longer showing in this list as well. Once I'm happy with the values, I can then use the option to make a payment, okay? And that takes me into the supplier payment window so I can make those payments to those suppliers. So again, I can make changes at this point. I can apply things like discounts, etc. So again, until I click save, nothing is yet set in stone. Okay, so that is the suggest payments feature. The last one we're just going to very quickly talk about before talking about remittances, which everyone has access to, is the batch supplier payments option. Okay, so batch supplier payments allows me to sort of process payments across multiple suppliers all in one go. Okay, so rather than going into one supplier making the payment, the next supplier making the payment can do this all in one window. So this is available in the bank module, and this can also be linked in with supplier payments. If you're using that feature via our partner Modular, you can link it into there. And also it can now be used to process e-payments. So in the past, that was a bit of a blocker on this feature. We now allow you to post e-banking through this feature as well. So I'm just going to pop back to the demo. And like I say, this one is in bank. So in the bank module, we have got the option to batch supplier payments. So notice there, it's not showing along the top. So we're getting a few questions around, I can't see options. One of the things that might happen is you can hide icons by right clicking and unticking them. Sometimes as well, depending on your resolution, it might group them. So look for any areas where you've got little triangles or little arrows, because this is where it's grouped items together. So under payments, I have batch supplier payments. So again, just to highlight, this is only available on professional, okay? So not everyone will have access to this. However, what this has brought up is all of my outstanding invoices again, and I can go through the list. So if I just pull my mouse across, you can see this is for multiple suppliers, okay? It's not just for one or two. It's got all of the suppliers with an outstanding transaction. It goes right through them all. So from here, this is where I can start to work my way through and decide which ones I want to pay. So I might want to pay and fill my oldest one from that supplier, my oldest one from that supplier, and you can see how much easier this is than having to go through each of these individually and pay them off. So I'm just going to pick a few here. It's showing you here how much we're paying. I'm just going to pick a couple more, pay in full. And again, if I wanted to part pay, I just pop in the amount I want to part pay that particular invoice. So again, it's going to pull through from this bank account here. And if I do want these to create e-payments for those suppliers who have been set up for e-banking, then I can tick this box here and it will create them in that e-payment file. Okay. What I will say is we are covering e-payments. I believe it's next Tuesday. So we do have a session on e-payments. So if you're wondering what we mean by e-payments in e-payment files, please get yourself registered for that session because we will be going through that in detail there. Okay, so I am going to save that. And again, that's just posted those transactions for me from one window rather than having to go into multiple. Okay, final thing I'm just going to talk about. Again, there's loads of questions coming through, which is great. So please do get your questions across there. And like I say, Matt or Michael will try and get those answered for you. Okay, so what we're just going to quickly talk about is remittances. Okay, so in your payments option, if you've got them grouped together like me, you might find it along the top, you've got the option for remittances. Okay, remittances, this window here will hold every remittance that has been generated through the software. There are two settings though, okay? So you can set up your software to always create a remittance, or if you switch that off, you have to almost opt into a remittance on each payment. So I'm going to show you that first. So that is in settings and bank defaults. And in here, just in the general section, you can see always create remittance. So if I just switch that off, okay, and just pop into a supplier and try to make a payment. So I'm just going to go into this one, for example. Just picking anyone up here at the moment. So if I, for example, went to pay this off and pay in full, at the top you can see I've got the option to create remittance. Okay, so I'm having to opt in to create a remittance for this one. So I've clicked create remittance, it's gone grayed out. I just need to make the payment. And that means that's created for me. But if we have the option on by going into settings and bank defaults, if I make a payment again, so I go back to supplier payment, that option's no longer there. And that's because it's just going to create it automatically. Okay, so just bear in mind with the remittances, just make sure what sort of option you've got switched on. But like I say, remittances can be printed from within the bank. And then remittances, and this is where you can print them all off. This is a list of all your remittances that can be printed. You can also opt to email them too. Now, there was a quick question earlier about purging. Purging is what will sort of take out the older remittances, okay? Once you've done a printout of a remittance, you can do a purge and it will remove them, but it does remove them permanently. So you do want to be very careful before you hit the purge option there. Okay, there's a quick question there that we'll just have a quick look at while we're on. When you post a batch supplier payment, does that just show as one payment on the nominal code 1200? So let's have a quick look at that. So we just did that. So we look at my recent transactions from that batch payment there. We paid quite a few in one go. So as you can see there, it's done separate transactions. The reason being is for transactions to be grouped together, they have to be posted on the same date, which we have, with the same reference, which they may well do, they do, but they also need to be for the same account. Okay, so because we posted to different suppliers, it's not grouped those together. Now, if you paid them all to the same supplier, using that same window without coming out and going back in, then it would attempt to group those together based on the other criteria too. Okay, so I think that's answered that one there. Right, I'm going to pop back to the slides. Please do keep the questions coming. Just going to pop back to the slides just to round up a few other things for you. So there is a little bit of information there on remittances. What I will say is just before we started this series, we did do a dedicated session on remittances. So again, some of our sessions will refer to other webinars because there's lots of sort of ways to branch off into different topics. So do have a look for that because I think it was just last week we did remittances. So get yourself registered for that. Okay, so let's move on to a quick summary. And there's a quick question there about unallocating a payment. leave that one with me. I will cover that in just a second for you once we've gone through the summary there. So customer receipts and supplier payments, they are allocated to an invoice and they create an SR or a PP transaction. If it's a payment on account, you'll be able to see because it's an SA or a PA transaction. There's options like the wizard and the allocate features, and the automatic features, which allow you to work out on your allocations which ones are best for you. The suggest payments feature, which is available in standard and pro, it will help you prioritize supplier payments. Okay, so you're paying off the oldest balances. And the batch supplier payments window, that's there to try and save you time from having to go in and out different records repeatedly. Remittances, they can be issued to your suppliers to make sure that your payments you're sending are allocated to the correct invoices. And as I've mentioned, we've got quite a few partnerships with third parties which help you take customer payments and also make supplier payments as well. So a quick question there is just how do you unallocate payments? So I'm going to just jump on and show you that one because this is a nice easy one to do. So I'm just going to pick on one of these purchase payments that I have made. In the old version, so if you're on a very old version, you need to pick which one to delete. Do you delete the invoice or do you delete the payment? Okay, now I think it's a few years since that was around. So what you do have, if you're on one of the more up-to-date versions, I'm sure we're looking at 3 or 4 years at least, is an unallocate feature. Okay, so I've highlighted the purchase payment here that I want to unallocate, and I have the option at the top just to unallocate there. Okay, that severs the link between the two transactions. So we'll just do it. Okay, but the transactions are still live. Okay, so that purchase payment has now changed to a payment on account. So you can allocate it to another invoice. If the whole transaction was wrong, then you would just need to go and delete the transaction. Okay, so you can unallocate to sever the link. Both transactions are still live, but if one of them is just incorrect, you'll need to delete that transaction. Okay, great. This time just always goes so quickly on these sessions. So I am just going to pop on a quick video to show you a credible, which is where the badges will be held if you meet the criteria for that. It's a couple of minutes long. So in that time, we'll just catch up with any final questions that are outstanding, but we will pop back just before we end the session there today too. Okay, so keep your questions coming. If you are leaving, thank you very much for joining us, but we hope you'll hang on so we can say goodbye properly at the end there. Okay, so that was just a quick video there of what to expect there with the badges. Now we hope to have those issued by the end of the month there for you. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of the session there. I think a question just coming at the last minute. We'll just try and chase that one up after the session there. So we'll reach out to you separately. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you will join us again for more of our banking excellence sessions. Remember, you must come to 6 out of the 8 and the quiz. Okay. A quick question there just about repeating the web address for Accredible. I'll get that also out to you separately as well there too. Okay, so thank you very much everyone for joining us. Take care, and like I say, hopefully we'll see you on another session soon.